Loba is a variant of Rummy, played in Latin America. This game is played between 2 and 6 players using one deck of cards for every 2 players. The main goal is to accumulate the less quantity of points by getting rid of all cards as soon as possible. All players are placed around a table and 9 cards are dealt for each player. Next, 1 card is placed face up on the table, which will be the discarded pile. Then the remaining cards are placed face down next to the pile, forming the stock. In order to get rid of all cards, each player tries to meld groups of 3 or more cards. These groups can be sets or sequences. A set is a group of 3 cards of a kind. This means the same values and different suits. A sequence is a group of 3 or more cards of the same suit but consecutive values. The joker may be used in both the sets and sequences, representing any card in a meld, and its use is configurable. However, it's a standard in Latin America to use it only in sequences. It's important to emphasize that it's not possible to meld 2 jokers, one followed by the other, neither in sequences nor in sets. Another way to get rid of cards is by adding them to sets and sequences. For example, say you have these 2 cards in your hand, you could add the 6 of hearts to the set on the table. In the same way, you could also add the 2 of spades to the sequence. In case there's a joker on one end of a sequence, its position can be changed to the other end before adding a card. Loba has 2 game modes, single match and tournament. Let's see first in detail how a single match works. After all players are placed around the virtual table, one of them is chosen at random for dealing 9 cards to each player. Then a card is placed face up on a table, which will be the discarded pile. The remaining cards are placed face down next to the pile, forming the stock where players grab cards from. The player on the dealer's right starts the game. The first action of a turn is grabbing a card either from the stock or the discarded pile. Then you should try to get rid of as much card as possible by melding sets or sequences, or by adding cards to existing melded cards. In this case, a sequence has been laid down. After that, a king of clubs has been discarded. The last action of a turn is discarding a card, which means it's your turn. If you look at your cards carefully, you'll notice that you can meld a sequence if you steal the king of clubs that the previous player discarded. It's important to mention that if you steal a card, then you have to use it immediately in your turn. You can't steal a card and keep it in your hand. If you steal a card by mistake, meaning that you can't use it in a meld or you can't add it to any set or sequence, then you have to discard it, finishing your turn as a penalty. I don't know if you noticed, but it could have been possible to add this ace of clubs to the sequence we just melded. Since we didn't discard any card, it's not too late for this action and we can just add it to the sequence. Now we melded everything we can, so let's discard a card to finish our turn. Your turn is now finished and you have to wait for the next one to play again. The first player to get rid of all of his or her cards is the winner. Now let's see how a tournament works. A tournament is composed of multiple matches, and the card values are of great importance, given that players accumulate points after each match based on their cards in hand. These are the standard values of cards. You can configure them however you like before starting a game. Let's assume that these 3 players have just played the first match of a tournament, and the first player was the winner, because he got rid of all of his cards first. The cards displayed from the second and third players are the cards they had in hand at the moment when the first player won. As you can see, the first player didn't accumulate points because he's the winner. On the other hand, the second and third player did accumulate points according to the respective values of their cards. Let's take a look at the entire development of a tournament. Player 1 won the first match, and the second and third accumulated 41 and 63 points respectively. The accumulated quantity of points will be taken into account after each match. In the second match, player 2 is the winner, meaning that she didn't accumulate points and she still has 41 points in the tournament. Player 1 had 26 points in hand, which are added to 0 points he got in the first match. In the same way, player 3 accumulated 7 points, which will be added to the 63 points from the previous match, resulting in 70 points. As you noticed, players accumulate points after every match. If a player exceeds 100 points, that player will be kicked out of the tournament. The tournament ends as soon as all players except for one are kicked out. That means the last player is the winner. All players contribute an equal stake to a pot that is collected by the winner at the end of a tournament. Let's see what happens in the third match. Player 1 won again, so he still has 26 points. Player 2 had 18 points in hand, giving us a result of 59 accumulated points. Player 3 had 35 points in hand, plus 70 accumulated points results in 105 points. That will mean he's out of the tournament. There's a possibility for players to keep playing in a tournament after exceeding 100 points. That's called Rejoin, and enables a player to acquire the highest number of points in a tournament in exchange for a small payment. For example, let's assume that player 3 wants to keep playing, so he pays a rejoin fee and gets 59 points from player 2 because 59 is the highest amount of points in the tournament. So the tournament continues with 3 players, and it turns out that player 3 won the 4th match and player 1 as well as player 2 exceeded 100 points. Since all players except 1 were kicked out of the tournament, player 3 is the winner. During tournaments, there are 2 additional ways to reduce points. The first way is by melding all of your 9 cards in one single turn. That's called a perfect hand, and 10 points will be deducted from your accumulated points. The second way is by cutting cards perfectly. In real life, before starting each match, a player takes all decks of cards and makes 2 groups of them. One group is placed face down on the table, which is a stock where players take cards from, and the other group is handed out to the next player on the right. This player is the dealer. If the group of cards to be dealt was perfectly cut, meaning that the dealer can deal 9 cards to each player, and then places 1 card face up on the table without taking extra cards from the stock or returning leftover cards to the stock, then 5 points will be reduced from the accumulated points of the player who cut cards. Thank you for watching this video. Now you're ready to play Loba. Have fun!